Can you get the dog out in the open just for the heck of it? Doesn't want to go. Okay.
He was supposed to bark.
Okay. Well, today we're interviewing Marie Hosley Herbert. She was the only one that I know of ever that represented Greene County in the Olympics. And so, Marie, I'd like to start way back when your father came over from Switzerland. Do you know when this was? Was he originally a cheesemaker?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then where did you grow up then, Marie?
Monhorn.
In Monhorn?
Yeah.
In a cheese bag?
Yeah.
There were what, 4 girls and a boy?
Yeah.
4 girls and a boy.
2 boys.
2 boys.
4 girls, 2 boys.
2 boys. And you grew up with the tradition of, you might say, athletics and as a turner and so on. Now, how small were you when you folks started gymnastics?
Well, we just did exercises when we were small with my dad. We used to walk around the room, and go on our toes and do different things, That's how we got started.
You were what, 5, 6 years old?
Yeah.
Sure.
And he'd work out with weights, and then we'd start doing things too.
Sure.
But I didn't do gymnastics till I was
Well, then when you
18,
were when you were 18,
yeah.
and then you belonged what to the Monroe Turn Club then?
Yeah.
And then of course your sister Helen was there too, wasn't she?
Yeah. Well, yeah, she came later. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then this is also where you met Mark, isn't it?
Right.
And then you were married. Well, then I think one of the impressive things that Marie and Mark did was when you got into that apparatus that put you up in the air.
Yeah.
How tall was that?
20 feet.
20 feet.
Yeah.
Well, they explain this, and some of the older folks in our audience would remember this. They had a steel pole with equipment on the top, and Mark had a big, heavy belt and a socket in there, and he put this pole in this socket and balanced it, and Marie was up in the air. Well, it'd be about 23 feet in the air by the time you figure everything. And then what all did you do up there?
Well, I did different, as I went up, I did different poses, and we had a strap up on top, over, I put my leg in, and arch my back and away from the pole, and did a headstand up there and a handstand. Mm-hmm.
But that was
scary at first, but then I got used to it.
Well, I said there was a case of you really having to trust Mark.
Yeah, right.
Because, and you couldn't have much wind or anything, or you'd have been in trouble. But I can remember that. I remember one time that they had, I think it was a national turn ride in Monroe, and you were in the south side of the square. And I can remember you were up in the air, and you were doing your thing, and Mark was. He'd have to adjust a little as you shifted your weight.
Yeah.
He had to adjust his, you might say, his attitude toward you, and it was a piece of coordination.
Well, yeah, he's the one that really balances me.
Yeah.
I just have to do it, and as quiet as I can without. He does the balancing, really.
You had to do the moves smoothly, or you would have upset his balance to you. But this was pretty impressive. And then Mark was actually a wrestler, wasn't
he? Yeah.
And
he did,
now, can you tell us a little what's the difference between Swiss wrestling and regular wrestling?
Well, I think I can't really say.
Well, they used the leather hose in the pants, didn't they?
Yeah, that's Swiss.
Regular Swiss. And then what they do, they actually, their idea was to upset each other.
Right.
And was it to raise the feet off the floor, or how I know they flipped each other. I never knew much about it, but I got a kick out of watching them. And then another thing that always impressed me was after they had the big turn contests, you would have balance beam, and you would have the, I think the big one in those days was, one of the big ones was the single and the double when you were on the poles doing the bars. And I can remember, was it Keith? Yeah, Keith Christian. I remember he used to go around and around and around on this thing.
On the horizontal.
On the horizontal. And that was, he had, I think, some leather things or something to keep from burning his hands. I don't see how he could do it. He could just go on anything. And then they had a lot of young ladies and a lot of old timers were there. I can remember, let's see, we had Abel Pricey was on. He was one of the old fellows. And Reinhard Mueller. And I remember Tom and Ida Schutz, and there were quite a few. There was some of the Wheatricks, and there was let's see, there was a girl, Elsa Ratina, I believe was her name.
Mm-hmm.
She was a good gymnast. And this was at the time before, you might say, the schools took over gymnastics, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How many people were involved in gymnastics when you were there?
Gee, when they first opened, I guess there was hundreds, but they all one by one dropped off. Because everybody thought that was the thing he was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then it ended up with about maybe 20, 40.
Yeah, you had a good, but that was your nucleus, that was your solid
Yeah.
crew. And then you went on expositions around the country too then, didn't you?
Mark and me. And
Yes.
well, we didn't really, not with gymnastics really. We went to different places for contests or something like
Okay.
that. Different towns or country, you know.
But this was on your own then.
But
You,
just what we hand balancing was on our own.
Mhm.
That's something that we came up from Madison. That's how we did. We went to the Madison Turners, and there was a man there who did the circus work, and
Okay.
he just thought that we'd be, you know, kind of keep still.
And then, now what about, did you travel around out of the country any then or not? With your expositions? Or were you
No,
mainly
no.
in the United States?
No, we just did it around
Mhm.
different places, you know.
Well now, Helen, your sister, was also active in gymnastics. Or how many of your girls were in that then?
Four.
For all of them were?
Rose,
Okay.
there's Rosie that's out west. She
Mhm.
was a good gymnast.
Well, see, I knew, Helen's daughter, Nancy, was a friend of my daughter-in-law, and they were college friends, you know, in gymnastics. And of course, Nancy has a beautiful daughter who was also
Yeah.
a gymnast, so that's 4 generations in your family that
Yeah.
did this. Well, then, can you tell us a little, you went to Helsinki in the Olympics, and I think that's just fit. We just finished our Olympics Atlanta, yesterday or so, or the day
Yeah.
before. And can you tell us a little bit about how you went there and so on?
Well, you first have to go to different meets, you know, and then I went to Penn State, and that's just the tryouts, and so I got to be on the team there. So
Okay.
they picked 6 girls and an alternate to go.
And then you flew to Helsinki.
Right.
And then what happened to you there?
Well, I don't know. We just had a lot of competition and a lot of. You enjoyed it really, but still it was kind of scary, you know, all that work and doing it for the other people, you know.
Now you went in front of, like you have a picture here with 75,000 people.
Yeah, we had a march in.
And then you had to contest, but you also got to meet the world's leading athletes.
Oh
didn't
yeah,
you?
yeah,
That would have been a good experience.
yeah.
I know my daughter-in-law was looking at the list of people. She said, well, I know that guy. And she was on this list that was out there at the depot.
Uh-huh.
And she knew some of these people. She said, well, they were a pretty good age fella, this one guy was. But she says that she knew him. And she was telling him, she says, those people were fine athletes. Now, what do you think of the ways of training now as opposed to yours? Yours was kind of a cow barn training, wasn't it?
Mine was.
Yes.
Yeah, because I came up the hard way.
You came up the hard way.
Right, because I was farming, you know. So we had to run to Madison 3 times a week. Of course, practice in the barn, you know. Mark fixed the balance beam. So I'd work on that as best I could.
Well, but Mark also helped you train.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then you also had people at Madison at the Turnverein that helped you?
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you, after you got your training in that, you, well, like, even for the Olympics, you more or less show that you could do and qualify for certain events, didn't you?
Well, you had to do that before you went to Olympics.
Yes. Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
So.
But I know I was concerned with some of these young people now. I wonder if the Olympic isn't a little bit hard on them physically. They're pushing themselves terribly hard, aren't they?
Yeah, young people. I said, then as you get older, they probably forget about the whole thing. That's why, you know, they're that young and they do so much that after a while they don't do anything.
You think it kind of
I don't know what it is.
kind of gets them tired of the whole business and then they quit.
Probably.
I know Mark Spitz was an example of that. He just quit swimming right now. He just he says he put he gave his mother some gold medals and they laid in the dresser drawer, and he just for a while I think he was just full of it and he was tired of it. See, and so he did. But you never got that way. You kept right on going in your life, didn't you, as far as athletics and so on?
Well, yeah. I mean, I always had other things I did besides gymnastics. I mean,
Sure.
you know, I like to do.
Well, you were.
I was always brought up with exercise, so I always kept on exercising and
That's
doing
wonderful.
things.
And now here you are in the wintertime out on the golf course doing cross-country skiing. That's wonderful. That just shows what keeping at it can do. No, I liked your family. I liked one fellow that I thought a lot of was your brother Tarzan, as we called him, Fred. And he was an example. I think he was in better shape than Johnny Weissmiller ever was. But I remember he was working for Chris Blumer one time down south of Monroe, and I was watching him put cheese away. And he made those 200-pounders look so easy. He was washing cheese in the back cellar, and he threw all these things in his knees and flipped them up on the top of the top shelf, 200 pounds, and it was so easy. You know, he was one of the most physical men I ever knew. He was quite a guy, and he was a good man. Then he married a lady who was completely his opposite, a gentle little lady, and she, and those two, we went to Switzerland when they did, and
She was good for a little.
She was just the opposite, but they were such a good pair. It was great. So I enjoyed knowing him. I thought he was a pretty great fellow. And your other sisters then are still around doing their thing, huh?
Well, Rosie, she was always a good gymnast. She was next to me when she was here in Monroe. But they still do a bit of it, I guess, for her husband, Ernie Shirk.
Yeah, Ernie Shirk, yeah, okay. Well, I saw Helen. I stopped at her house here, probably a month ago, and I noticed she still has an exercise machine, and she's in good physical shape. I get a kick out of her, and so she's enjoyed it. So it's paid off. But all in all, I think your experience in Helsinki is something you never could forget.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, that's good. And then you lost Mark at a young age too, didn't you?
1960.
1960. About 8 years after the Olympics. And then she married a fellow named Marvin Herbert later years, and he was a good friend of mine. He was a great human being.
Yeah.
I liked Marvin a lot. But you had, in your father then, did he make cheese all his life?
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
But mostly around Mount Horeb.
Mount Horeb and Milledgeville, who was there.
Illinois.
That big plant there,
Okay.
Milledgeville.
Yeah.
Illinois, of course.
Yes, Milledgeville, Illinois.
Probably worked for Fred Blumer down there. Fred Blumer managed that.
In Milledgeville.
Yeah.
Or Fred
At
Blumer
first.
was her father.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right. I was going to say
no
Fred
wonder he got
Blumer.
a job down there. Sorry, I didn't make the connection.
Yeah, Fred
Yeah.
Blumer. These were the Blumer family. See, and they were, of course, everybody around here. They talk about Marie and Helen, oh, those were the Blumer girls, you know, that's the
Yeah.
way they're thought of. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So it was fun knowing you folks. I appreciated that we could come and see you. We'd like to talk to Helen too sometime because I know she has a little story of her own. And I know you had a lot of prizes. You won a lot of things. And one of the things I enjoyed, I think that I remember most probably was to be impressive to me as a kid, was when they had the turn parade after they had their big, and they had the men with their, and the ladies with their garlands. Of course, you would be saying, getting your laurels and so on, and that was quite a deal at that time. And then, of course, you had the little kids, and they were, you know, when they used to have the parades, I remember one time in Cheese Day, and here were these little kids about 5, 6 years old, and it was hotter than the dickens, and they were coming right along with it, you know, and they were part of it. And see, a turner from the old country was also, you might say, a mental way of life. He respected his body, his country, and it was something like scouting or that. It was an attitude, see, that people were to live cleanly and keep themselves in physically good shape and so on, the condition. So turning was a large thing. There are turn variants all over the world.
Yeah.
And there still are in some countries, especially more so than here. Our school system, more or less, has taken over. I would say that you know, as far as the turning is concerned, it's now become gymnastics.
I don't call it turning anymore.
Turning is gymnastics.
Yeah,
And,
because
but in the old days, you know, they called it turning fest.
because after you came from Finland, that's when I started, where they started getting it in the schools.
Is that right?
Yeah,
After
because
that
I had a
time?
meeting about that then,
Mhm.
that the schools should really start doing that.
I'd like to bring my daughter-in-law over and meet you sometime because she's head gymnastics coach at Ball State, and I got a little story to tell you. When she was first married, our son, I was showing her some pictures and some maneuvers and so on, the handstands, which you can't do anymore. But anyway, she said, well, how do you know about that? Well, I said, where did gymnastics come from? She really didn't know. I said, that's imported from Switzerland. So she didn't say anything, but next time when she came to our house, she said, yeah, you're right, Dad, I did my homework. So she didn't realize then what it was. Well, Marie, you look back on it all, and it was a good experience, wasn't it?
Right.
And it's paid in health for you. It's been a way of life. And we thank you for being able to interview you, and maybe we'll see you next winter skiing.
Yeah.
Thank you kindly. First, I mean, he wanted gymnastics, or as it was in those days known as a tournament. He respected it, you know, and that's what he wanted, you know.
One of those pictures we have, both of you are holding boards of medals,
Yeah.
real long
Oh, yeah.
ones, and you won many of those together. They still had Turnverein when we moved here 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And Art Chandler and I would trade off taking his 4 boys and my 4 boys together, 8 of them down to Turner Hall on Friday nights, and it only, I think, it cost 50 cents to get in or to get in for the evening, but it cost us a lot of money.
Yeah, well,
We had to take them out to the restaurant afterwards, and 8 healthy boys will eat you out of house and home. But we used to laugh about it.
Well, that was the thing that was good about it, and it was a very good outlet for young people, you know,
Yeah.
to have to do something like that.
Better
No,
he was around town,
Yeah.
getting into trouble.
Well, especially since I've retired, I've gotten to know the Swiss community because I got into this cheese making center, and I've gotten to, instead of being just passing acquaintance, I've gotten to know a lot of these folks. Remarkable bunch. The work ethic is certainly there, and it isn't anything they're conscious of. I mean, here's guys that 75, 80 years old, and you can't just sit around. You have to do something, and it's something useful.
Well, Bill is our historian. He's doing a good job, and
I've been doing a lot more carpentry work and painting
Well,
on
yeah,
history.
he's
but-
done some of that too, but the historian end of it is really where we want to get. Well, just like farmers and cheesemakers were recording all the people, and well, I was just talking this morning about, we recorded Lester Witt last
Went out to his home in Dutch Hollow, and
Dutch Hollow and recorded him, and now he's gone. See, I mean, so we're losing. Well, I said I regret we didn't do a lot of this 20 years ago, Marie, because, man, we've lost a lot of our old timers in the last 15, 20 years.
well, we have about 150 interviews on tape, and people in any way connected with the cheese industry, and sometimes just interesting people.
Yeah.
It isn't entirely a Swiss club. We did have a McKnight factory, a Johnson factory, and a Curran factory, but practically everybody else is Swiss.
Yeah, Irish, Norwegian, Swede. Well, around Mount Horeb, you had quite a few, Norwegian people in your,
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
hold your dad, in fact. Yeah, well, that's strange when you remark about Milledgeville. Sure, Fred Blumer, that was her father.
Yeah, well, the thing that's remarkable, have you seen those pictures, framed pictures, on the ramp as you come in? The University of Wisconsin Extension was founded in 1898. There's a picture of what must have been their first cheesemaking course in 1899, Fred Blumer, front and center.
Yeah.
The next one, they had them twice a year all through those years. But the next picture is 1920, Fred Blumer. And then there's a picture of Kibley, remember, was the hauler?
Yeah, Kublai.
Kublai?
Yeah, Kublai.
Okay. But he was the leading hauler, and here's this truck with 12 skids of Swiss wheels on it, 6 on the side, and so that's 30 wheels.
That's
Why that truck didn't go like this? Because that was in the early 1930s.
Yeah, I can remember that. I mean, the cheese was also perfect.
Yeah.
When my dad made cheese, he really had nice looking cheese.
Well, and then he went with Kraft.
Yeah.
And he apparently went around and helped set up a number of factories, but in Milledgeville he stayed on as the manager.
Yeah.
And there's a picture of him sitting, apparently right after they opened the factory, sitting in the middle of this bunch of employees. But and that was it was fairly modern, 40s, I think. I'm not sure, but that's a long time in the cheese business.
Oh, yeah. When did your father quit making cheese then?
She was
Well, that's a hard.
Milledgeville. We
Milledgeville.
were, I think it was in Milledgeville. Yeah.
40s?
I think it must have been, yeah.
It wasn't too long ago they closed Milledgeville. So now the only plant in northern Illinois is Stockton, and that's going great. I was through there last week.
You were. Yeah, my cousin, I don't know if you knew Hans Rechsteiner. He used to run the Stockton. Rex just died last spring, or it was not very long ago. But he ran the Stockton plant. Well, first he ran the Manlius, Illinois plant. He got that going, and then he got his brother Adolf to run that, and then he ran the Stockton plant. See, so we knew, we were familiar with that area. I used to go down and visit him. In fact, he stood in his front window and watched our 1965 tornado form out in front of his yard, and that thing started going northwest, and he says to Gene, he says, boy, somebody's going to get it, and we did.
Yeah.
He saw that thing start. That was something to see. Well, Marie, thank you much.
Yeah,
we'll
well,
run along. I appreciate talking to
I'd do a better job.
you. We'll see you.
Fine.
If it's no good, don't use it.
Oh,
No.
it'll be all right.
I mean, too much more.
But this is amazing that, in 1952, 75,000 people, look at that thing. Yeah, that was quite a thing. And have you,
I don't know if you ever seen
and there's, have you kept track of some of your former friends?
it. Well, we did for a long time, but then you know how it goes. And after a while, we write
shrinks.
for quite a while.
Mhm.
There's one from Chicago I wrote quite a while. Would you grow
Don't
over
stop
there?
petting, huh?
Okay.
I remember taking that picture. We didn't have our suits. We just had them pinned on, so they weren't fitting the best. They wanted that picture, so it would have been look better. Suits would have fit the way it should have. I remember taking them.
Well, as you probably know, Turner Hall's in some deep trouble financially,
Yeah, someone said that.
and it may go under.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
But see, it's a different way of life. You see, when the Turn Rhine, as we used to call it, when the Turner group,
Mm-hmm.
the Turner Hall was the center of our community. See, that is no longer the case, and that was a different world. Yes, that's. We will swear that we will take part in the Olympic Games in loyal competition, respecting the rights and regulations which govern them, and desirous of participating in them is the true spirit of sportsmanship for the honor of our country and for the glory of the sport. I guess they had a real successful, I didn't watch much of it, but in Atlanta they had a real good, they had a successful.
Well, the spirit has changed. What he just read there, I don't think is any longer applicable.
Yeah.
What you see is well, people taking drugs to enhance their performance. That's totally against that sort of thing.
Didn't think of that then.
Yeah.
No.
Kylie, shut up.
Well, and the moral issues, they weren't that competitive.
Yeah.
It was a case of win or lose, we're there, we're going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And now it's just too competitive. It bothers me.
Yeah, you were a true sportsman. See, that was the difference. And you also made good friends, and it was a different. They are under tremendous pressures now. Those young people. Really, they
It's
are.
a nationalistic contest.
Yeah.
It's not an amateur contest.
Yeah, and they start too young, really, I think.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say
Yes.
that because that's right. You take young kids that are only 12, 13 years old. See, and I was talking to Dr. Nadja one time, and he says, physically the joints aren't ready for
That's
the
right.
strain they put on them.
That's
see.
it.
But
Now they're
you,
going to make it, I guess, to, was it 14 or 16?
yeah,
I don't know.
no, of course
Could
not.
be
Like,
16.
you've never suffered any
No.
bad results from being a gymnast,
No, but I think they did things sensibly.
Yes.
I mean, they didn't push you beyond your limits.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
the fact that they have professionals in there now.
Yeah.
That's the other
It
thing.
never was allowed when I went.
No.
I have no,
Yeah.
No.
did a lot of hard work, that's for sure.
Well,
What was the
you
name
were-
of that fella that was head of the AAU? Averill Brundridge?
April
Yeah.
Brundridge.
Yeah. Well, boy, he didn't permit any messing around. I remember there were scandals. Somebody played one game for pay, and boy, he threw out. He was thrown out. He couldn't compete thereafter.
See, Fritz over from South Wayne, what was his name? Rexiger was his layout man. And Fritz traveled, I met him some years ago when Burnett's were still there, and he stopped in to see Werner once in a while. But Fritz Ritziger worked for Averill Brundridge, and he was the man, the first one, like say Atlanta, he would be the first one that would go and approach, and this was years ahead, and he would go and approach the Chamber of Commerce, the businesses, and so on, and go into a town and say, well, can we do it? And he was the layout man. He was a busy fella. He didn't see him very often, but he was from South Wayne.
Well, that's changed too. Now you don't go and hunt up the sites.
No,
They come banging
to
on
you.
your door 20 years in advance.
Yeah. But see, Brundridge was incorruptible. That was one thing that was
Yes.
good about this man. He was a man that didn't take any monkey business.
Show you this. I was going to show you this. He's got a name sign here somewhere, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Hey.
Sure.
Here, why don't you just hold that up, Nate? Let me see what I can get of it.
Let me,
Just stay where you are.
Not a bad dog.
can you zoom in on that?
Yeah. I have to just make an adjustment. Okay, thank you.
He's gonna get us 2 cents.
You betcha. You're a tough guy. I'm scary.
Oh, was we?
You're pretty tough. You betcha.
As long as we got this turned on, we might as well bother him, or her, as the case may be.
There.
You make a noise down, maybe. There. He's pretty neat boy.
Yep.
Well, Brundage must have been there a long time.
Yeah. And then there was Moore. I don't remember his first name.